Hi, this is P. Andrew Sandlin, founder and president of the Center for Cultural Leadership. I'm here at the Center for Reformational Culture, owned by the Ezra Institute for Contemporary Christianity at the Runner Academy 2019 in Grimsby, Ontario, not too far from Buffalo and in the Niagara region. That was a mouthful. I'm recording this outside for a specific reason, not just because of the scenic beauty and Lake Ontario behind me, but because I'm going to speak about creation. Specifically about creationism or creational worldview. Let's take creationism briefly first. Creationism is a particular viewpoint that became prominent over the last 50 or 60 years in North America. Launched by godly men like Henry Morris, for example, and carried on, Creation Research Institute and so on. And their goal was to champion biblical creational truth in a time when the inroads of Darwinian evolution, both biological and cosmic evolution, had shattered not only the Christian consensus in the wider culture, but also had sadly subverted many within the church. They stood for 6-day creation, that God created everything in 6 ordinal days. Adam and Eve as actual historical characters, the actual literal fall in Eden, the universal flood. In fact, books have been written on that the flood was not just a sort of local phenomenon, but really stressing a fairly literal interpretation of what the Bible teaches concerning some of these creational issues. I hold these views, I've always held them, and intend to. However, when we have espoused or affirmed creationism, we have not said everything that Christians need to say or understand about creation. In fact, in some ways, perhaps we've not even scratched the surface. We need to embrace a creational worldview, which really is saying foundational truths of the Christian worldview. The creational worldview is actually a foundation of the Christian worldview. That should shape our thinking. In fact, I'm suggesting that the biblical understanding of creation shouldn't simply provide us with apologetic means to undermine the false narrative of Darwinism and popular notions of evolution, but should positively shape our thinking and how we live our Christian lives. For instance, creation lays out a number of creational norms, 7 of them in my view in the first 2 chapters of the book of Genesis. I won't take time to enumerate them now, but I will mention some of them that I think are most relevant in our cultural milieu today. Well, we start with the creator-creature distinction in Genesis 1:1. God created the heavens and the earth. That God created everything else through his son Jesus Christ by the power of the Spirit, the 3 co-equal members of the Trinity, and that God is separate from his creation. That doesn't mean he's aloof, he's not involved in it, but the Bible does not teach pantheism, pan-anythingism, that he is somehow merged with his creation, that this beautiful creation is somehow God. It's not God, though God pervades it and is here at all times. He's omnipresent. This repudiates all pagan notions of the unity of God and creation itself. It preserves the creator-creature distinction, as I said, is the norm there at the beginning. My colleague Peter Jones, who's been lecturing here at the Runner Academy this week, likes to use the nomenclature of oneism versus twoism. Twoism is the creator-creature distinction. There are 2 things. There's first God, the triune God, and then there's everything else. And that distinction can never be compromised. And then there's oneism, whose goal is essentially that while there might be more than one thing, the goal of life is to merge everything back into one. That's ancient paganism. It's also neo-paganism. I think you'll find that modern radical feminism, as well as large aspects of a theoretical homosexual agenda, those intelligent people who are pressing that agenda really are returning to paganism, a neo-paganism that would get rid of all distinctions. As Peter Jones likes to say, the mind is a distinction-producing factory. And that's why oneists want to join everything back into one and support mindlessness, getting rid of the mind. So that's just one aspect of the Christian worldview, the creator-creature distinction. And then there's man made in the image of God, in the Latin Imago Dei, that we are created to be bearers and are bearers, whether we want to be or not, or know it or not, of God's image. The ancient Greek ideas that influenced Christianity saw this largely in terms of that man has a separate soul and man has reason and so on. Actually, the biblical view is that man is a being like God in that he can commune with other beings, particularly a being made in his image. And there's this reciprocity, but perhaps even more than that, explicitly. And this leads to another aspect, important creational norm, and that is the cultural mandate that we are sub-creators, if I may say so. God is the creator, and he causes us to create culture under his authority. We are deputies. We're not original creators. There's always the creator-creature distinction, but under his authority, we create culture. That's called the cultural mandate. That's man's original calling, and in some ways his final calling. And then another creational norm is man and woman equally created in God's image. We talked about Imago Dei, but there are two. There's not one, but there are two, the male and the female. Nothing else, by the way, besides those two. There's male and female. There's no such thing as a pre-sexual humanity. We can't go beyond or get behind our sexuality. I will always be a male. My wife will always be a female. Jesus himself, even in his resurrected body, glorious body, is male and will always be male. Don't misunderstand. There is no sexual intercourse or marriage in the eternal state. But in our resurrected bodies, we will still be males and females. Why? Because to be human is to be sexual in one of two ways and nothing else, male or female. And then another aspect, one of these creational norms, is the inherent fruitfulness of creation. You ever notice in reading Genesis 1, God is constantly saying to the plants and the animals, be fruitful, and then he creates man and woman, and what does he say? Be fruitful. So sterility, and inherent or intentional sterility, is contra-creational and contra-biblical. This is why all of those who get married should attempt to have children. Make no mistake, I'm not criticizing anyone who cannot have children. God himself opens and closes the womb sovereignly, but the intention not to get married and not to have children is a blatant contra-creational sin. In fact, I would say one of the worst sins. Of course, homosexuality is a sin because it subverts, overturns, and attacks this cosmic order. I'll conclude with that. These creational norms are woven into the cosmos, just like physical laws. The law of gravity, for example, and cause and effect and so on. They're woven into, we might use the metaphor of the operating system. These cosmic laws are part of the operating system. And when you break these laws, just as you would try to do something in a computer it wasn't designed for, things start breaking. They start breaking sexually. You try to change man into something else, male or female, into something God didn't intend. When you start erasing the creator-creature distinction, when you start championing sterility rather than growth, cultural growth everywhere as a result of freedom, including free markets, I would add, when you support sterility and these other things, contra-creational things, things start breaking. And that's why we have a largely broken world. Thank God that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to repair the break. I should say the breaks. And all of this beautiful creation, we look around and see. Though beautiful, it's been spoiled and cursed by sin, but that curse will one day be removed and is gradually being removed by the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. What I've just given you right there, sort of in quick summary form, is aspects of the creational worldview. As you can see, it's much deeper merely than creationism. So I would ask you, if you're a creationist, don't change your creationist viewpoint, but please go much, much deeper and embrace a creational worldview. I'm P. Andrew Sandlin, founder and president of the Center for Culture Leadership, ChristianCulture.com.